Why Africans never sought to conquer the world. Because although African peoples occasionally launched military campaigns beyond the continent, those instances were rare, often circumstantial, and usually motivated by forces quite different from pure imperial ambition. Take a few examples. Ancient Egyptians launched expeditions into the Levant. Abyssinians, early Ethiopians, invaded Yemen. Berber-led forces, together with conscripted black African soldiers, pushed into southern Europe during the early Islamic period. But these were exceptions, not the rule. Today's question is deeper. Given the immense ethnic diversity, wealth, and innovation across Africa, why did so few African civilizations develop an aggressive, expansionist culture beyond their own continent? Let's dig into that. Welcome to another journey through African history, philosophy, and worldview. If you'd like to support the creation of content like this, you can do so by subscribing to the channel. Now, it's important to say up front, this is a working theory based on historical facts, patterns, and philosophical ideas, but it's open to critique, refinement, and alternative interpretations. Also, many of the phenomena we'll explore are not unique to Africa, but the way they express themselves on a continent and their intensity is crucial to understanding this subject. We'll primarily focus on West and Central Africa, though examples from North and East Africa will also come into play. African military expeditions outside the continent. The context. Yes, African civilizations did invade areas outside Africa at times. The New Kingdom of Egypt, around 1500 BCE, expanded into the Levant, building an empire that reached parts of modern-day Syria. However, much of this expansion was defensive, meant to create buffer zones after experiencing invasions from Asian powers like the Hyksos. The Kingdom of Aksum, modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, invaded Yemen in the 6th century CE. Yet, this was largely a religious intervention, aiming to protect persecuted Christians under the Himyarite kingdom. During the Islamic conquests of the 7th and 8th centuries, Berbers from North Africa, alongside black African auxiliaries, crossed into Spain and southern France. However, their campaigns were inspired by the spread of Islam, not indigenous political ambition. Even Carthage, a North African power famous for Hannibal's invasion of Italy, was Phoenician in origin, founded by settlers from present-day Lebanon. In all these cases, African expansion was either reactionary, religiously motivated, or sparked by outside cultural influence. Contrast this with imperial expansions like those of the Greeks, Romans, Persians, or Mongols, which were often rooted in local ambitions to dominate and control foreign peoples directly. A different concept of power. One major reason lies in the African conception of power. Across many traditional African societies, power was seen less as territorial control and more as proximity to divine or spiritual forces. Philosopher Innocent Onyenwere highlights that during colonialism, Africans were puzzled by the European view that educated individuals with formal degrees were automatically leaders. In traditional African thought, true authority came from age, wisdom, and closeness to ancestral and divine forces, not mere political or military achievement. Scholar Chancellor Williams provides a vivid story. When a European explorer visited a king in East Africa, he was shocked to find he had to wait 2 weeks for an audience. He assumed the king could act unilaterally, as European monarchs did. However, African kings often couldn't even greet foreign visitors without the presence of their senior elders, who symbolized collective ancestral authority. This is a profound difference. In Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, land equals power. In many parts of Africa, connection to the divine equals power. Thus, an African ruler seeking to expand simply to own more land or extract tribute would have been seen as missing the point of leadership itself. Leadership was sacred, not purely political. This distinct worldview naturally discouraged reckless military adventurism. Abundance of natural resources. Another critical factor. Africa's immense wealth in natural resources. Europe's expansion, particularly during the 15th and 16th centuries, was fueled by a desperate search for scarce resources: gold, spices, silver, and later sugar. Meanwhile, West Africa was overflowing with the very goods Europeans sought abroad. The Ghana Empire was referred to as the land of gold by Arab historians. Mansa Musa's 14th century pilgrimage to Mecca demonstrated such incredible wealth that he disrupted the gold economy in Egypt for years. African blacksmiths and metallurgists produced superior iron goods compared to Europe's wrought iron products. So much so that even Portuguese traders transported African iron to other parts of West Africa to trade. Africans didn't need to voyage across oceans to find gold. They sat atop some of the world's richest deposits. Thus, there was little incentive for long-distance conquest in search of material wealth. In short, why go looking for what you already have? The role of religion, local versus universal. Religious philosophy also played a major role. Religions that historically propelled empires outward, like Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism, shared two traits. 1. They claimed universal truth. 2. They demanded the spread of their teachings to all peoples. Yuval Noah Harari points out that to motivate conquest, a religion needs both a universal superhuman order and a missionary mandate. However, most indigenous African religions, particularly in West and Central Africa, were localized. Each ethnic group had its own deities, ancestors, and spiritual traditions tied to specific places and histories. These religious systems were ethnically idiosyncratic. They focused on maintaining harmony with one's ancestors and environment, not converting outsiders. Without a universalizing religious mission, there was no ideological drive to build continental or global empires. When African societies adopted universal religions, like Islam or Christianity, they occasionally joined broader imperial campaigns, but those expansions were inspired by foreign imports, not indigenous religious imperatives. Some weaknesses in the theory. Of course, this theory has its limits. The idea that Africans uniformly link power to spirituality fits many West and Central African cultures, especially among Niger-Congo language groups. But it doesn't necessarily apply to all African societies, especially in the far north or south. Not every region of Africa was blessed with abundant gold or fertile lands. Certain areas faced resource scarcity and internal competition. Thus, caution must be used when generalizing. But still, the overall patterns are strong enough to suggest that the dominant African worldview was fundamentally different from the imperialistic models of Eurasia.